The Mexican Grand Prix delivered high-stakes drama, with Carlos Sainz claiming his first victory in 7 months. The race was intense from start to finish, marked by chaos involving Max Verstappen, who was hit with a massive penalty of 20 seconds. While Sainz's journey to the top spot seemed smooth, chaos unfolded behind him, with Verstappen clashing once again with his title rival, Lando Norris. Sainz's composed performance earned him the win, but the story of the race centered on Verstappen's penalties and his dramatic confrontations with Norris, mirroring their United States Grand Prix clash just a week earlier. Verstappen started the race strong, seizing the lead heading into the first corner. However, his momentum was disrupted by a safety car, triggered by an incident involving Yuki Tsunoda. This gave Sainz the opportunity he needed to challenge Verstappen, setting the stage for a series of thrilling battles between Verstappen and Norris that would soon dominate the headlines. As the safety car period ended, the tension between Verstappen and Norris reignited. Their rivalry, which began the previous weekend at the United States Grand Prix, resurfaced in full force. This time, Norris made a bold move at turn 4, attempting to overtake Verstappen. However, the Dutchman was relentless, defending his position with aggressive precision, forcing Norris to cut across the corner to avoid contact. When Norris emerged ahead, Verstappen wasted no time, launching a daring dive down the inside at turn 6. This aggressive maneuver sent both drivers off the track, sparking immediate scrutiny from the stewards. The stewards didn't take kindly to Verstappen's aggressive tactics, handing him 2 separate 10-second penalties, a total of 20 seconds for forcing Norris off the track and gaining an unfair advantage by leaving the racing line. Even without the penalties, it seemed Ferrari's pace was superior, hinting that Verstappen's chances of winning might have been slim regardless. The FIA's decision to penalize Verstappen heavily drew immediate attention. Just days after their intense battle at the Circuit of the Americas, Verstappen and Norris found themselves locking horns once more, this time under the spotlight of the Mexico City Grand Prix. Verstappen, who had initially snatched the lead from Carlos Sainz at the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, soon found himself in a vulnerable position as his car's battery power depleted. With diminishing reserves, he was left open to attacks from Sainz and soon after from Norris. Norris's attempt to overtake at turn 4 ended in frustration as Verstappen defended his ground fiercely, pushing the McLaren driver off the track. Frustrated, Norris immediately voiced his displeasure over the radio, accusing Verstappen of reckless driving. Things escalated further at turn 8, where both drivers went off the track and made contact. Unlike in Austin, where the FIA opted not to interfere, the stewards in Mexico took a much stricter stance, penalizing the reigning champion harshly for his actions. Verstappen's penalty disrupted his race strategy, forcing him to serve the time delay during a pit stop on lap 28. By the time he rejoined the action, he had dropped far down the order, with only his teammate and Lance Stroll trailing behind. However, Verstappen wasn't ready to give up. Determined to make a comeback, the championship leader began working his way through the field, climbing up to P9 by lap 37. Meanwhile, Oscar Piastri was also on a mission to recover from a poor qualifying session. The Australian driver aimed to score points by going long on medium tires, but the strategy backfired. After pitting on lap 41, Piastri struggled to catch Kevin Magnussen, who held on to 7th place. For Mercedes, the race followed a familiar script, unable to keep pace with the frontrunners. George Russell faced additional challenges, dealing with front-wing damage that threw off his car's balance. To make matters worse, Lewis Hamilton, piloting a newer spec car, couldn't capitalize, trailing behind Russell for most of the race, despite his teammate's damaged vehicle. Lando Norris's podium finish added excitement to the championship battle, slightly cutting Verstappen's lead. However, with Ferrari in exceptional form, Norris knew he needed to watch his back as both Ferrari drivers were gaining momentum. The Italian team capitalized on their double podium performance, pushing ahead of Red Bull in the Constructors' Championship. It was a proud day for Ferrari, as Carlos Sainz not only secured the win but also led the team to their first back-to-back 1-2 finish since 2008. While Charles Leclerc seemed on track to finish second and lock in Ferrari's dominance, the McLaren of Norris loomed large in his mirrors. The pressure mounted, and on lap 63, Leclerc's grip failed in turn 17, causing him to slide wide. Showing quick reflexes, Leclerc narrowly avoided hitting the wall, but the mishap opened the door for Norris to slip into P2. This late surge from Norris set the stage for a thrilling chase between him and his former teammate, Carlos Sainz. Despite Norris's best efforts, Sainz held firm, crossing the finish line first after 72 grueling laps. The action-packed Mexican Grand Prix wasn't just about the leaders. Chaos unfolded throughout the field. Yuki Tsunoda's race ended almost as soon as it began, with a collision involving Alex Albon on the very first lap. Albon, trapped between an Alpine and Tsunoda's car, was powerless to prevent the crash and sustained damage that forced him to retire as well. Sergio Perez, the home crowd favorite, faced his own challenges. A penalty added 5 seconds to his race time after he was found guilty of starting grid violations. As if that wasn't enough, Perez later tangled with Liam Lawson, a young driver rumored to be eyeing Perez's Red Bull seat. This incident resulted in damage to Perez's car, further compromising his performance. By the time Verstappen served his penalty on lap 28, the Dutchman found himself isolated at the back of the grid, with only his teammate and Lance Stroll behind him. But despite the setbacks, Verstappen began clawing his way back into the points positions. As the race progressed, Mercedes faced a familiar struggle, unable to close the gap to the leading teams. George Russell encountered additional complications after damaging his front wing, causing an imbalance in the car's handling. Meanwhile, Lewis Hamilton, driving with the latest car updates, struggled to overtake his own teammate despite Russell's damaged vehicle. This performance raised concerns within the team about their ability to challenge Ferrari and McLaren. Oscar Piastri, aiming to recover from his disappointing qualifying, couldn't capitalize on his strategy. His decision to stay longer on medium tires didn't pay off, and after a pit stop on lap 41, he found himself unable to challenge Kevin Magnussen, who defended his 7th place position. At the same time, Haas celebrated an impressive race day, with both Kevin Magnussen and Nico Hülkenberg finishing in the points. Pierre Gasly rounded out the top 10, ensuring Alpine's presence on the leaderboard, but it was a forgettable race for Fernando Alonso, whose 400th career start ended in mechanical failure. The off-track drama was just as captivating as the race itself, with tensions running high among the drivers. The weekend kicked off with an intense drivers' meeting where Max Verstappen and Lando Norris reignited their debate over fair racing tactics. Following their clash in Texas, the two drivers discussed their actions during the traditional briefing in Mexico, with the focus on how they defended and overtook one another. According to reports, the exchanges were direct but respectful, as both drivers sought clarity on the rules. Sky Sports' Craig Slater reported that the meeting was lively, with many drivers voicing concerns about inconsistent stewarding. The consensus was that the FIA needed to raise standards and improve its decision-making process. During the discussion, the FIA acknowledged some ambiguity in the current guidelines and promised to provide clearer rules moving forward. The stewards also committed to refining the language used in the racing guidelines with the hope of ensuring more consistent penalties and improving the quality of competition in future races. Carlos Sainz later shared insights from the drivers' meeting, expressing optimism about the discussions. "I think it was a productive session," Sainz remarked. Many drivers were open about their experiences and thoughts on how the rules should be interpreted moving forward. "We're all hoping for clearer guidelines from the stewards that will help us race more fairly and avoid unnecessary penalties." He also hinted that further progress could be expected during the Qatar Grand Prix, where new solutions might be introduced to enhance understanding between drivers and officials. While Ferrari's success in Mexico gave the team a boost, the battle at the front wasn't without challenges. Charles Leclerc's aggressive start briefly put him ahead of Sainz, but Sainz managed to regain control and extend his lead over the pack. Even though Leclerc lost P2 to Norris, Ferrari remained pleased with the team's performance, achieving their first consecutive 1-2 finishes in over a decade. Meanwhile, Sainz's resilience paid off as he withstood Norris's late charge to take the checkered flag, solidifying his place as the race winner. While Ferrari celebrated their success, the Mexican Grand Prix ended in disappointment for several other teams. Fernando Alonso, marking his 400th race start, was forced to retire due to mechanical failure, cutting short what could have been a milestone performance. Sergio Perez, the local hero, struggled throughout the race. After picking up a penalty at the start and damaging his car in a collision with Liam Lawson, his hopes of a strong home performance quickly faded. Speculation swirled that Lawson might replace Perez at Red Bull, further adding to the tension. Despite setbacks, Verstappen fought valiantly, moving into P9 after serving his penalty. However, the Dutchman's efforts were not enough to impact the top standings. Haas had a standout day, with both Kevin Magnussen and Nico Hülkenberg finishing in the points, boosting the team's morale. As the race concluded, McLaren's podium finish kept Norris in the hunt for the championship, though Ferrari's form made it clear that the fight was far from over. With Qatar next on the calendar, teams and drivers are bracing for another round of intense competition and high-stakes battles.